Sydney Build Expo 2024 Day 1. Great to see so many people through the doors first thing this morning, and thank you for taking the time to join us for the BCI Construction League panel discussion and networking breakfast. My name is Ted Tabbert on behalf of BCI Central, and I'll be leading the panel discussion this morning, which will be a fantastic way to pulse check the New South Wales construction industry as of May 2024. And with the insights of some of Australia's premier builders, we'll explore where it's potentially heading in the next coming months and years. So a little bit about this panel discussion. Our talk today coincides with the release of the third edition of the BCI Construction League. It's our latest and free report, and it's available for download on the BCI Central website in the coming days, so stay tuned. For those who are new to the Construction League, our report serves as a standings table or a league table showcasing the nation's top 50 firms, ranked by the total value of the projects that they've commenced construction in the past calendar year. For each of the top 50 builders, the report provides top-level key insights into the number of projects that are breaking ground, their average project values, and importantly, the pipeline values and their totals. For the top 10 builders, we also provide a breakdown by project sector and project location. So much like a ladder where teams climb up or down based on their wins or losses, the construction firms do the same in our annual league ranking, based on their project successes, their market presence, and their growth prospects. So how is this made possible? The league table is powered by BCI Central's extensive database of active construction projects within our lead manager platform. BCI data is produced by our expert team of 200 plus researchers who track well over 40,000 projects and their key stakeholders each month. So it's felt like a long 12 months since we last met at this stage, and there's been a lot of movement across the New South Wales construction landscape in that time. Construction firms have continued to play a critical role in driving the state's economic engine. And to help me try and tell the story of what's happened, we have some familiar faces joining us here on stage and some new ones in our panel, and I'll introduce them to you now. So Robert Ferrulo, Executive Manager of Corporate Communications at Daycorp. In a career spanning nearly 30 years, Robert has occupied senior roles in government, public administration, and the corporate sector. Within Daycorp, Robert heads up the Corporate Communications Division with responsibility for corporate reputation, branding, marketing, community engagement, and Daycorp's charitable programs and key stakeholders. Paul David of Hutchinson Builders. Paul is the National Head of New Business and Strategy for Australia's largest privately owned construction company, Hutchinson Builders. With revenue of $3 billion per annum, Hutchie is also the 9th largest private business in Australia. A construction industry veteran of 34 years, with 28 of those years at Hutchie's, Paul began his career as a cost planner within the business. His extensive knowledge in cost and bid management has assisted Hutchie's in converting in excess of $2.8 billion worth of opportunities into construction projects. Tim Trimble, Construction Manager of Capital Group. Tim is an astute construction professional with a reputation for his dedication to quality, from project delivery through to the design and construction at the highest standards. As Capital Group's most experienced construction manager, he has delivered a wealth of projects across various industries, including premium commercial, mixed-use projects, luxury residential projects, large-scale data centres, as well as health projects and institutional developments. He brings years of experience working with an A Tier 1 contractor, having worked on some notable projects in Australia and the Middle East. Mark Avery, New South Wales Director of ICON. Mark has earned his graduate degree from UNSW before spending his formative years at Buildcorp. He then spent 10 years in leadership roles at Richard Crooks Constructions, honing his skills in strategy and business development. With a focus on bringing sustainable growth to the business, Mark is now the New South Wales Director of ICON. And finally, from BCI Central, Ashley Martinson, Head of Account Management for Australia. As Head of Account Management, Ashley leads a team revolutionising the way the construction stakeholders identify opportunities and drive business growth. With a background in product specification and supply, she brings valuable insights to both builders and suppliers, driving excellence and empowerment throughout the sales process.
ICON New South Wales, we're probably most known in recent times for being the builder of Opal Tower. So We are now in a position where the biggest challenge we've had is to try and re-establish our reputation as a result of that. And I think in light of recent activity in the residential building sector, we're quite proud of not what happened, but more so about what we did to try and rectify that building. And and you think about, well, what do you learn from an experience that costs a company $100 million? It's all about trying to provide certainty around quality, trying to provide improvement around everything that we do. And if the role of the builder is to create certainty, times are about as uncertain as they are. So the biggest challenges we've got at the moment is how do you try and create that stigma of certainty when things are so uncertain. So that's where we find things at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, so probably the supply chain, we're still feeling the effects of the supply chain. We're doing a lot of work in the data centre space, which has been really good for us, but at the same time, there's such high demand at the moment. We're seeing things like generators out to 60-week lead times and switchboards out to 30 weeks. So now the supply chain is such a high demand, it's become really difficult. Steel as well is still an issue, especially in Melbourne. But then there's also lots of opportunities too. So the opportunities start to come up more around the build-to-rent space. Lots of refurb and readaptation in Melbourne of existing premises. So there's lots of opportunity there. So good growth to come.
Dacorp's a residential developer and builder. Currently we've got around 3,000 units under construction. We're Sydney-based, Sydney experts. One of the things that I think everybody in construction is facing is the same thing we're facing, is the challenges of costs. Tim just touched on the materials cost, the challenges of getting labour for jobs. But in addition to that, we're also seeing the impact of rising interest rates, the cost of capital for projects that have been started 2, 3, 4 years ago. The feasibility of those projects required funding costs at a certain level. Funding is now much more expensive, and that's been one of the big challenges for builders like Dacorp. On the opportunity side, what we are seeing is continued strong demand for new apartments in Sydney. I think that's been experienced in lots of other markets as well. That strong demand for new apartments is seeing strong price growth. We're also seeing, for the first time, an agreement between federal government, state government and local government on the need and the importance of development, the role it plays in providing homes and putting downward pressure on housing prices. So in terms of for the construction industry, what this hopefully means is that we'll start to see some planning frameworks that will help make construction more affordable and easier to deliver.
I'll start off with challenges, and I dare say it's probably easier to say what hasn't challenged us as an industry is probably an easier answer. We've had atrocious weather conditions across the eastern seaboard that's affected programs. Definitely the skill shortage, and I think that's crept up on us, and that's really pronouncing itself in lack of productivity. I don't know about you, but we are definitely experiencing a difference in productivity pre-COVID as opposed to post-COVID. We're measuring productivity on building sites at about 20% less than what it was 4 years ago, and I think we're now dealing with the post-COVID workforce and how to deal with that. And that's obviously driven by skill shortages and underemployment in our industry. You know, we are 150,000 short of what the skilled workers we need around the country to make our industry sustainable. And I think we're going to really be challenged in the future with that, and that's going to continue on. Certainly the insolvency piece of subcontractors and contractors alike has really damaged the industry. I think there wouldn't be a builder that hasn't had a damaged balance sheet as a result of the last 3 or 4 years. So there's lots of challenges, but big positives. Where we see the opportunities is obviously the immigration that keeps on coming into Australia. That's going to drive at the rate of 5%, so we've got natural growth coming into the market, which is going to affect housing, retail, data, offices, etc., etc. We think the housing crisis is very real. We believe that whilst challenging the Albanese government of policy of 1.2 million homes over 5 years is achievable, and in order to do that, we've just spent $20 million on a prefabrication yard in Newcastle, where we will prefabricate multi-level and single-level housing to try and participate in those opportunities. So we recognise we need to get smarter as an industry and not just work harder. And I think that's the opportunities for us.
Look, the way that Daycorp has approached this issue is by having a strong, respectful relationship with our subcontractors and our suppliers, understanding the frameworks within which they operate, and being able to, and helping them understand how our business needs to operate, so that we can have clarity and a common purpose moving forward. It's really important that they understand the constraints of the market, and that we can then try and find solutions together. So working with our key partners, working with our clients, working with our suppliers has been one of the most important ways in which we can meet the challenges of insolvencies. One of the things we've also focused on as a business, because of the uncertainty in the market about new residential buildings and the focus on quality, is that we've really put a lot of effort into promoting our reputation and our track record. And I think for a business, it's really important that you can show that you've got the experience and the capability, so that your purchasers, your customers can have the confidence to make sure that they know that they're dealing with someone who's experienced and capable.
Yeah, probably for us, and similar to what Robert and Paul had mentioned, it's cutting down on waste. So cutting down on waste in numerous ways, not just waste on site, but avoiding reworks and trades and making sure that the subcontractor gets a really good run at a job. And one way to do that is getting the design right in the first place. So we're investing heavily in our design side of things and making sure, both in the 3D space and also 2D, that just really making sure that the design's right before we actually do it. That makes it better run for the subcontractor, and then also makes an overall better quality product in the end. In addition to what Paul said, prefabrication is definitely another one. We're looking more and more into prefabrication, and we're seeing that come in more, and it might be just from prefabricating a switch room or a chiller module, or bathrooms and the like as well. So that's another big one. Then quality systems, investing heavily in quality systems just to make sure that, again, the subcontractor knows the expectations, put the right control measures in place, the right hold points, and then it's better for everyone, better for the subcontractors, no reworks, and saving money overall. So, and overall giving the client a better product.
Yeah, so there are ultimately insolvencies due to the interest rate hikes and various different issues coming up in the market. What we are seeing, though, overly, is those insolvencies are actually creating opportunities for other builders to basically come in and take advantage of. Some strategies, I suppose, to overcome these things is having a robust strategy within the business. So I think these points have sort of already been touched on a little bit, but ensuring there's no wastage of time, wastage of resources, wastage of those sorts of things. And also, like you said, prefabrication, those kinds of strategies can really work well in terms of, rather than building a whole bathroom from scratch, you have a prefabricated one and essentially gets sent straight in there. Also, I guess more from the data perspective is, putting your resources into what is going to be the most profitable for you rather than what's just coming up to your desk in any given day, and having a bit of strategy around how you're approaching those projects that come through.
I think there's some common themes here, and we certainly support that, but probably three things that we're doing a little bit different outside of that is that there is no doubt that Australia still gets most of our construction material overseas, so controlling that supply chain risk is something that we've invested in. We have people on the ground in several countries around the world just ensuring that we can get our hands on materials. It's one thing to say it's on a ship, until it's actually here, you don't know it's actually going to be here. So we've invested a lot of time in just making sure that we get materials in an uncertain world. The second thing is there is a labour shortage, there's no doubt about it, and so we need to get more people into our industry. I think it's closed off to a lot of people, and the obvious answer to that is there's almost the entire population of women who would not consider construction as an industry, so we can invite more people to our industry. It is the second biggest employer in the country, and we should probably be trying to get more and more people to come to us to get more labour, to get more productivity. So that's the other thing that we're doing. And the other thing for us is that our parent company is a Japanese business, and in Japan they've got some inherent problems that have been going on for decades. An ageing population, a younger population who don't want to go into construction. So they're well down the track in trying to understand how to overcome some pretty big and systemic issues. And they're really turning to robotics and AI to try and, things like, so reinforcement tying, for example, in Japan they can't find enough people, so they've got machines now that can do that. Contract negotiations have been done through AI, really making things efficient. So, industry is known for working hard, and I think what Paul said was if we're going to continue to work hard, it's how to get more time and more product out of what you do, which is the big focus for us. For example, and technology is something to be embraced, and no one in construction should really be scared of it, because right now everybody from the person mixing the mud for the bricklayer to the guy running the business is absolutely flat chat. He's going home with work on their minds because they just haven't got enough hours in the day. So AI will actually help people perform better. So I have no fear of it. I spend weeks upon weeks negotiating contracts, trying to understand risk. Subcontractors would do the same. How do you understand risk? AI can take that away and do it in a couple of hours for you. You type in what your risk profile is, you type in the inherent issues on a project, either the subcontractor, the developer, or the builder, and you can also get to a middle ground a lot quicker than putting 10 people in a room and arguing. So, an example like that would cut down a significant amount of time for everybody. So for that reason, we're embracing that. And that style of AI is sort of, within grasp, 18 months to 2 years away. So it's not stuff like driverless cars or driverless, robot bricklayers. We're talking stuff that's within grasp in the next couple of years.
There's a lot of emerging industries out there. We are true to our decarbonisation targets around the country. We've got to build 150 years of infrastructure, energy infrastructure, in the next 20-year period. So that's an enormous amount of work, and we haven't even seen the tip of that yet. That will then challenge our normal markets. Rob and Tim and Mark will have to compete against those industries competing for our trade. So that's going to put more and more in risk on it. So, but having said that, there's a huge amount of opportunity. The most recent announcement from the federal government increasing the spend on defence from 2% of GDP to 3% of GDP, in terms of our industry, is massive. We're going to see a huge amount of work pumped out over the next 5 to 10 years from the Defence Department, just maintaining their barracks and keeping up with the technology that new submarines and new planes and new armoured vehicles propose. So there's an enormous amount of opportunity going there, and that will start to permeate over the next 2 years, I think. Housing, I see, is probably the biggest crisis that we've got. We do need to build 1.2 million homes, there's no doubt about it, over 5 years. How we get there is going to be questionable. But again, we've got a lot of sectors all firing on all cylinders, and it's just competing. If there was a way that the federal and state governments around the country could potentially prioritise their infrastructure planning and give some visibility and priority of that, I think we'd get through it a lot smoother. And that's probably a failing of both the state and federal sectors across the country. And if you look at Hutchies, in our case, typically 30% of our turnover is state and federal government, 30% is institutional, and 30% is private. What we've seen in the last 12 to 24 months, and I think we'll see a lot more of this over the next 2 to 3 years, is 70% of our last book, of our last quarter of written work was government work. 15% private and 15% institutional. So clearly the privates are struggling to make projects work, and Rob, you alluded to that in your world, and we're starting to see the private developer model start to really be challenged with viable products, because the cost of construction is outweighing or outpacing the cost of the product itself. So there's going to be a lot of competition for emerging markets, as well as the requirement to service what we've had at the moment. So in terms of profitability, I think every builder is trying to return to profitability, and that's a big focus. Unashamedly, Hutchings will turn over $3.5 billion this financial year and will post a profit of about $10 million. So we're talking about fractions of percentages in terms of margin. That would have changed, but we had to allocate $40 million of insolvency, right? So we had 4 subcontractors go broke on us, and that cost us $40 million. So the difference between having a good year and a bad year is really about insolvency for us. And to let you know, and then I think you need to understand, it's a very fragmented market, the subcontract market. It's made up of hundreds of thousands of SMEs, small mum and dad practices at home. They employ 5 or 6, maybe up to 100, 150 guys and girls. We sit on the Australian Taxation Office's Builders Advisory Panel. We're one of 2. The other one is Metricon, who's Australia's largest house builder. And the reason why we're there is because we pay more subcontractors, the number of businesses and small enterprises, than anyone else. Pre-COVID, 1 in 3 subcontractors had a tax debt payable to the Australian Taxation Office, which technically you could say that 1/3 of the industry was insolvent. Today, 2 in 3 have a tax debt payable to the Australian government, which potentially means that 2/3 of the subcontract industry is insolvent. We're not broken, but we're not far away from it.
Well, look, we're, as I said before, a residential builder and developer. In New South Wales and Sydney in particular, we're seeing some planning reforms come through, which I think are going to influence the market moving forward. Just announced very recently the new transport-oriented development SEP, which is being introduced in Sydney and regional parts of New South Wales, where it means areas, suburbs around train stations will get higher densities. And what we anticipate this will result in is an increasing number of moderately sized projects rather than a small number of really large projects. So what we anticipate is that the small to medium builders will probably find opportunities around those new transport zones where they can build housing up to 6 stories relatively easily. And I think that's been a bit of a change, and I think that we'll see an opportunity for small to medium builders to perhaps take that step up and start to deliver some larger projects from what they've been delivering in the past. So I think one of the big changes or the big opportunities in the future is the alignment of the federal housing targets and the state planning system to try and deliver better planning outcomes and approvals to get the construction industry moving. The challenges we're going to face, as Paul's identified, is labour. Getting the skilled staff to do the jobs is going to be an ongoing problem across the industry, whether it's residential, whether it's government work, whether it's civil work, whatever it is, finding the skilled staff to do the job is going to be the huge challenge.
Just to probably add on to what Paul and Robert have said, but we're a bit different down in Melbourne. We're seeing big advancements in data centres, which is pretty much across the country, which has been really good for us, and will continue to grow, obviously, with the growth of AI and digital engineering. So that's massive, and we'll keep in that space as long as we can. Then the other opportunities, as I touched on before, is the build to rent in Melbourne, and I think across the country is very strong, and we'll see more of that. Very competitive though, a little bit what Paul's touching on with just the housing market's just very, very tight. And then the other one's defence, and Paul mentioned that one as well. So we've seen a lot more sectors open up, and then there's the infrastructure works that go with that, like the train stations and this type of build too. So it's quite a healthy kind of forecast, but it's very shaky, like Paul mentioned. Subcontractor selection is going to become a major part of what we do, and making sure we get the right person for the job and make sure that they make money, because you want them to survive. We need them on the next project. So it's creating that setup, the program, and not calling them in before you need them, and making sure the subcontractor gets a good run. So I think the forecast is still looking healthy though.
So for probably Q3 and 4 last year, we saw a bit of a dip in projects entering the pipeline. But coming up to Q1 of this year, we've seen a really significant increase in a lot of different sectors. So, for example, residential is one. We've seen about a 10% increase on where that was last year at this time versus this year, which is really positive. There are some really booming industries. These have been touched on sort of already, but the infrastructure sector is nearly 800% increased on where we were last year. So there's just an absolute ridiculous upturn in that industry, as well as things like office buildings and industrial office. We've seen about a 350% increase in just that sector alone. So of course there are going to be a million challenges that everybody's dealing with in the industry, but for the first time in a long time, we're seeing a really, really dramatic upturn, which is really, really positive in a lot of ways. I think for, any business working in the construction industry, what's more important now than ever is things like, we've all said, your AI technology, making your processes tighter, but also looking into things like your green developments and your build to rents and the things that people are going to invest more money in moving forward. That's obviously going to give everybody a much better chance, I should say, in getting involved in these projects. And, relationships now more than ever with suppliers, with builders, with, various people throughout the industry are just more important than they've ever been, because those are the people that are going to get preference over others in this ever-changing market.
The next 24 months, on a personal level, I think the number one issue that the construction industry has to face, and everything stems from the fact that there is a housing shortage in this country, and everything comes back to the right of people to have somewhere to live, and I think from everything stems from that. So the old saying that the fortune made in the gold rush is from the person that sells the shovels. If housing is going to take off, they're going to start looking at civil infrastructure, amenity, parks, schools, all the things that goes with that. And if you bring everything back to this God-given right that in this country that people have somewhere to lay their heads at night, then the entire industry needs to come together and solve that problem first, and every bit of opportunity will come as a result of that, in my absolute opinion. And I think that every decision we make at the moment is only 1 degree away from student accommodation, housing for over 65s, co-living, build to rent, build to sell. There is so much around that space at the moment, and so much demand. As an industry that employs over 1 million people, we have a very strong voice collectively. We come together, we help solve that problem, and everything stems from there, in my opinion.
Thank you for that answer, and I might start with you for this next question. We're going to change tack a little bit. Sorry about my microphone. But considering where we are right now in this room, the amount of technology that's on show over the next 2 days, I was just wondering how crucial new technologies are to Icon and to your business, and how you've leveraged them for growth and efficiency in the recent years.
Yeah, technology comes in many ways. It's absolutely the forefront, I think, of everything we do. Paul touched on it before. We're in an industry that is expected to go carbon neutral very soon, so material technology is the one that we're really focusing on at the moment. The way in which we can get materials to site with minimal waste, that is safe, that is producing a manner that is, reducing the carbon footprint for us. That is pretty big at the moment. It's very front of mind in everything we do, and for us to utilise that as quickly as we can makes it more affordable. If you think about the first iPhone, how expensive that was compared to the latest iPhone in a comparative basis, getting things into the mainstream is what makes products affordable and mainstream. So we're trying our best to do that. So if anyone gives us work, give us a contract, and we'll make sure we use those products as a part of that. But we are certainly trying to make the products work a lot better, particularly in a country where, when it comes to building smarts, we are one of the leaders in the world. So product development and material development in Australia is something that I'm very excited about. And if you look around here today, you'll see that just how far that's coming, and tap into the international world as well, the global framework and supply chains, then you've got a pretty good outlook solving, which is probably the biggest problem humanity's faced, which is to reduce carbon.
What we're seeing at the moment with data is that it's just more important than ever for people to actually have oversight of it. Because when you know what's happening in the market in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years from now, when you're, have the ability to have, things like BCI, things like AI technology all pulled together and actually giving you the data of, where the industry is going, where it's going to be, that's really, really, really important. What we're seeing now is the successful companies are the ones that are adopting new AIs, that are adopting new technologies. And like you said before, they're not scared of jumping into these things, because ultimately that is, having full oversight, having your name on all of these projects. That's how you get the new innovative products that are going to be, green friendly and those kinds of things. And that's how you can ensure that the projects do meet all of the standards and criteria. So it's becoming more important than ever, even just in terms of systems that companies are using to manage internally. If we're spending 5 hours less on quoting and various different things per week, because we have data-driven tools that are allowing us to view this information, it is really helpful to just everybody moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's right. Actually, we're looking quite heavily into it at the moment. In the next 5 years, what we see is that we'll be doing the same amount of work with half as many people, or twice as much work with the same amount of people. And so the ways we can do that, even now we invest heavily into our digital engineering. So right at the start, into the BIM model, we do not just clash detection anymore. We go into VDC, or it's a virtual digital construction, where we can actually sequence the project and work out how we're going to build it safely, but also efficiently, and putting quality in place. We're doing things, we're using a program called Open Space AI, where it's basically like Google Street View. Someone walks around with a 360-degree camera on their head twice a week, and it is such a really good QA check for us, and you can compare it to the model as you go. It was done to run analytics on that and be able to see where we are on program, but really simple things like checking where the stud is in the wall. You can go back in the time camera and see exactly where it is, where the PT strands are in a slab. So we're getting some really cool products coming through, and we're really trying to adopt what we can and have real-time QA on site through, so nothing's retrospective anymore. It's done real time, and that helps everyone in the long run.
Yeah, I think all businesses, if they want to remain viable, have to be looking at how they can better use technology across their business. One of the things that we're looking to do with our projects is to interrogate the data that we have already on hand from past projects, to go back and look at how things have worked out, and then extrapolate that for future projects, so that we can find ways to make savings on materials, find ways to make savings on sequencing of projects. It's really important that the people that we work with, our key partners and suppliers, are also looking at how they can use technology to be more efficient, and work with us to make sure they're all integrated with our systems.
Whilst Hutchies is embracing all that sort of technology that my other fellow panellists have put together, our innovation approach is more hands on the ground. We understand that the skill shortage is not going to go away anytime soon. We're going to live with this for the next 5 to 10 years, in our opinion. We just don't have the time to train the volume of workers that are required. So to combat that, we've just invested another $20 million in a modular manufacturing facility in Newcastle. That'll be our third online. So all up, our aggregate investment in that space is about $80 million over the last 15, 20 years. So it's a significant amount of investment, and it's starting to now pay for itself. We're manufacturing our own bathroom pods that we're installing in our apartment buildings, in our hospitals and prisons. We're manufacturing at the moment $800 million worth of hospitals in regional Queensland and New South Wales for governments. We'll be operating a modular factory in Melbourne within the next 24 months. So we're trying to eliminate the amount of site labour that is required on site, and try and build it more in an automated atmosphere and shed, if you like. So that's our way to combat, and we need to get that productivity back in to make this industry sustainable. So I think we're going to see naturally over the next decade a huge amount of innovation in trying to increase productivity on site, in terms of laying bricks and laying concrete slabs and so forth. The AI and all those tools will we'll get through our industry, and then everyone will embrace it, and it'll be fantastic, and we'll get that part of our industry, that front end and that quality control that Tim's talking about, as best it can be. But the real challenge, I say, for the industry is how do we increase the amount of productivity that we have to do for the skill shortage that we have. It's like all things with software and technology. Every product has something you want, but no one actually gets to put it all in one package for you. So you try and end up with 3 or 4 packages trying to do the one task. Look, how we disseminate that, we've got a business analyst team that sits down with our IT department, and we run through all the technology that's available, and we make selections on it. We trial it on site to see if it works. We trial it in our teams to see if it creates efficiencies, and we actually try and measure that. And only that, through that process and that gate, will the product be embraced. We're not going to roll it out through our teams. Many of you know how Hutchie's is structured. We've got 25 autonomous business units. So we'll trial it on 1 or 2 business units rather than try and get the whole company to focus on it. And if it passes that test, then we'll look at engaging and rolling it out into further teams and so forth. So it is a slow process. Builders are traditionally not early adopters of technology. We don't like to be pioneers. We like to see it tried and tested. We'd like to see it tried and tested on Tim's jobs first before we do.
So if we find a new product, we'll definitely jump on board.
Yeah, I think there's some great answers here, but I think it's if as an industry we stop and we look globally, around the world, the construction markets in different countries are at a different level of maturity. And fortunately for us, as I mentioned before, we're owned by a Japanese business. Some of the issues in the industry we find ourselves in Australia at the moment, they had 2 decades ago, so they're well down the track of trying to solve issues, not because they wanted to, because they needed to. And so that sort of broadens your horizon. If you start looking at the solutions that we want to bring into our industry, they by and large already exist around the world. And I think, touching on Paul David's comment before, builders aren't great at looking up a lot of the time. We don't have the time. We're concentrating on sites, we're concentrating on markets. But I think collectively as an industry, we need to look at what's happening globally and adopt very quickly the best of technology that's already out there being tried and tested. And for me, I'm as guilty as anyone. When I came over to Icon, the thing that really changed my perspective of the world was when you speak to the Japanese owners and some of the things that they are doing in different parts of the world. They've got businesses all over the world, and some of the technology is mind-blowing. And it's how do we adopt it here as an industry, make it affordable. And that comes from subcontractors, comes from suppliers, but there's a big part of government and developers to want to pay for it as well, to try and get into the mainstream, which is touching on the point I raised before. Get something into the mainstream, it becomes popular overnight. So that's a big push for us when it comes to technology, and we tend to make our decisions based on that sort of data. I might touch on some of the more exciting things we're doing at Icon, and it's pretty close to my heart. We've got two tranches of work that we're looking at the moment. We're doing work in the Pacific, and talk about technology. We're able to do work in Vanuatu, Tonga, Fiji, places like that, using local trades. And if you can ever go to a place like that and provide work and income for local people, it blows your mind away how special this industry can be and how much of an effect it can have. And the reason we can do that is because of technology. We use drones a lot of software, obviously being able to have video conferencing and a lot of audio visual has made that possible. And the second thing is we are part of a JV with a company called BAPA, which is owned by Icon, 49%, and 6 Aboriginal land councils from Victoria. And they're doing work all over the country. And the story they've got is pretty phenomenal. They're going to places that you would never consider of, places I have to look at the map a lot, and going to places like that and providing, high technology, new modern facilities and employing local people is the thing that excites me the most, because it has an impact. And when you think about this industry getting together collectively and making a difference, they're the 2 things that come to mind for me. There's also going to be a lot around housing, as I said before, the stuff that follows housing and data, but they're the 2 things that excite me the most about Icon.
For the next 12 months, it's essentially getting involved in all of the new projects, I think. And if I look at it from more a supplier or a builder's perspective, there's a lot of work coming up, and it's essentially being choosy about which projects you want to be a part of, which projects are going to generate the most amount of profit, what's going to create, the best for the community. We've talked a lot about build to rent, the residential market, how that's going to affect us as a country as a whole. So, really seeing the investments that the government have put in around housing. They have put in, I should say, the Minns government has put in $1.9 billion towards the residential market just from government funding over the coming year, which is really exciting because we've all talked about the residential market and how much it's needed for, these homes across not just New South Wales, but the whole of Australia. So we're seeing a really big increase across that sector, and mostly as well the infrastructure, the train lines that we've also heard a little bit about on this panel so far, but essentially creating communities around these locations, making it easy for people, giving them houses, making it easy for them to get to the city, to get to their jobs. We spoke about driving cars and things like that, taking those things away from, younger generation of people that are coming through to make things more affordable in general. So, it's a really exciting year that's coming up in the construction industry, and good luck to everyone.
Yeah, it's probably spoken about it quite a bit, but our focus is data centres, the build to rent, refurbs, commercial, got a refurb of a really cool hotel in Melbourne as well. But then there's also, looking further what Paul said, there's a lot going into the prefabrication and even doing it regionally. So you're actually getting some work, like Paul in Newcastle, but we're looking at some of the regional centres throughout Victoria to do some of the prefabrication from. Gives opportunity for those regional areas but also helps keep the costs down and prefabrication, bringing it to site a lot quicker. So a lot of focus on that. So it's actually a pretty exciting 12 months coming up.
Look, as a builder and a developer, for us, the next 6 months is going to be the exciting part of the job for us, where we get to hand over apartments to their new owners. In the next 6 months, we'll be handing over 800 new apartments to excited new owners, places where they'll be able to live. And over the next 12 months, we'll be starting work on another 4,000 apartments across Sydney. That we have already approvals for, or we expect approvals in the near future. So it'll be busy for us. The exciting part, as I mentioned, is when we get to hand over the keys of the new apartments to their new owners and give them a new home to move into and to live in.
Rather than specify projects, I'd rather think the surprising thing and what we've been amazed about is with what we've talked about today, challenges and escalation costs and program delays and skill shortages, etc. I've never seen an industry as a whole, as a property and a construction industry, work more collaboratively than we have seen. I think there's been a significant mind shift from clients to think a builder is a partner. A builder brings smarts to the table. He brings a subcontract, reliable resource to the table that can work as a team. I think the days of being a tenderer and a number thrown in a tender box is over. I think the smart clients have realised that you now adopt or select a builder based on a fit for an outcome, a fit for a relationship. And I think that's what is the big mind shift change that we've seen, and it's exciting. For once, builders are just not a number, and it's a race to the bottom. I think people are seeking value. They understand that. They're prepared to talk about risk. They still want the builder to take some, but they're prepared to have a bit more of a balanced risk profile in the contracts. So I really do see a bit more of a collaborative partnership arrangement moving forward over the next decade, and I think that's only good for everyone. We work on modest margins. I think we're just happy to make a margin, and 1 or 2 points isn't going to make a difference to a project, but it's the outcome that the client's wanting, and it's about what you said before. It's about certainty, right? It's the client wants certainty. He wants to know that he's got a builder intact at the end of the day, and so he's got to make that call possibly 3, 4, 5 years ahead of that handover date. So. You can only do that if you've got a partnership in place. So I think that's the most exciting thing that we're going to see over the next near future.